Welcome to the All About You podcast. My name is Sheila and I am your host. If I said the words to you, school reunion, what is your initial reaction? Would you say, great, just tell me where and when and I'll be there? Or, no way, I'm so happy to have left those days behind. Well, my husband Pete has just returned from his school reunion and I thought it would be a good topic for the podcast. So Pete is my husband and also a returning guest for the third time on the podcast. Pete, welcome back.
Hello, and thanks for having me back.
So you have just returned from your school reunion. So for you, it was a big yes. So let's get some background on your reunion. Happy memories of your time at the school?
Yes, very happy memories. The reunion that I went to was possibly slightly unusual because it was a primary school reunion. I would imagine quite a few people have been to a secondary school reunion, but to go to a reunion for primary school is probably unusual. And it was, we worked it out, it's at least 60 years ago that we were in the school. So it's a very long time to go back and see what's happened and how things have changed.
So let's talk about your reunion then. It wasn't in Spain where we're living. So where was your reunion?
Well, that was one of the things that I think made it so special. We were, in a way, quite privileged children. The primary school we went to was a military school run by the Royal Navy in Malta. And we were all children from people in the services or people who worked in the dockyard.
So you were born in Malta?
Yes, I was born in Malta. Many of the people that went there weren't, but they were all living in Malta at the time. So we were kind of a special bunch in that we were all children of military families and we were living in a foreign country. So that in itself makes it quite different.
When you got the first information about the reunion, what was your initial reaction?
Initial reaction was, yes, I'd love to go back and see the school. I'm quite lucky in that I've been back to Malta loads of times, so going to Malta wasn't as big a thing as it was for several people, because several people at the reunion, it was their first time back in Malta since they left school in the 60s, in the 1960s. So that was quite a big thing for them. As I said, for me, I have family living in Malta, so we travel there on a regular basis. Malta itself is not the draw, but it was seeing the school and also the intrigue of wondering whether I would recognise anybody, whether I would know anybody when I got there.
I mean, I think for anybody who has organised a reunion, whether it's a school, whether it's a company, or whether it's a group of friends, it's generally quite a lot of hard work. But this was inviting people from basically all over the world to congregate in Malta for a particular event. I mean, that's quite an undertaking.
Yes, the lady that organised it did an amazing job. And there were a few surprises on the way, which we'll talk about in a minute. So, yes, people came, certainly mostly from England, but there were people from other countries throughout the world. And to organise them and get them into the same place was quite an achievement.
So it's quite an undertaking organising this when it's not actually in your own country.
Yes, indeed.
Did a lot of people sort of say yes right at the beginning for this event?
There was a steady stream of positive responses once the idea was put forward. They have actually done a few reunions before, but mostly in the UK. So the group of people have got together before, but not necessarily in Malta. So there were people that were certainly up for it right from the beginning. And it was first mentioned over a year ago, so everybody had a chance to sort out their diaries, plan in advance, book flights and however else they were going to get there.
So did you know in advance the names of the people who were going to attend?
I did. We had a list of all the names and there were a couple of names I recognised, but the reunion wasn't for a specific year group. It was for anybody that had ever attended that school. So the oldest person that attended was actually 92 and she was a teacher at the school. And I guess talking to the people there, I was probably one of the youngest at 69. There may have been a couple younger than that, but that was about it because the school closed not long after I left. So yeah, it was, you're never going to recognise people 60 years on. At least I don't think so, but we've all changed. But I certainly recognised a few names and was interested to see them when I got there.
I mean, I think that's incredible that one of the other teachers came along. That is incredible.
Yes, yeah, it was incredible. And she's an amazing person. So to have made that journey and to keep in touch with everyone, it's great.
So was there an itinerary of the days that were planned?
Yeah, we had about 4 different events planned on, I think it was the Monday, the beginning of the week. It was just a get-together in one of the hotel bars, just as a chance to say hello to people, meet people for the first time, see if you recognised anybody. And that was a fairly informal occasion. Not everybody could make that, but during the week people made various different activities. And then on the following morning we had a trip to the school and a tour around the school. And this is where the first surprise was sprung on us by the organiser, because she organised a vintage bus to take us to the school, and it was exactly the same bus or type of bus that we used to go to school in when we were kids, because all of us were bussed in, or nearly all of us were bussed in. So yeah, that was certainly a trip down memory lane.
So we're talking about a bus from what, the
From the 1960s.
60s?
The old, really old Maltese buses. And if any of you have ever been to Malta, you know the old-fashioned Maltese buses are quite something. And this was an amazing thing to have done, and everybody enjoyed it thoroughly.
The funny thing about this was that when the bus pulled up outside the hotel to pick us up, several members of the public were trying to buy tickets to get on the bus, thinking it was a regular trip. And the same thing happened when the bus dropped us off at the restaurant later on. Many people thought it was a Malta tour bus, wanted to get on with us.
So when you first met everybody at the first event in the bar, did you recognise any of your school year?
Yes and no. We recognise names, and because there is a Facebook group for the school, then we had seen pictures of what we're like now. So we weren't relying on an old black and white picture from 1960s to see what you look like. And there were actually 2 people there from my class. And as I said, whilst we wouldn't have recognised each other necessarily in the street, we shared a lot of memories and spent a lot of time together just talking and reliving old memories.
Reminiscing.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
So had the school changed a lot since you were there?
Surprisingly not. When we were at the school, and this part really hadn't changed, there was a big playground in the middle of the school, and all the buildings were in a quadrangle around the outside of it. And whilst a couple of those buildings had changed, had been knocked down and rebuilt, most of them were still the original building from the outside. So we recognised like the school hall where our assemblies were every day.
Did it still smell the same?
No, I don't remember a school smell actually. And none of us could remember whether school dinners were supplied or whether we all had to take packed lunches. But if they were supplied, they obviously weren't very good, because nearly all of us took packed lunches. So yeah, the little group of 3 of us that were in the same class, we found our old classroom. And the school were very good, because the school was still functioning, and there were children from the present day school in classes. But they were quite happy for us to wander around and talk to the kids and talk about our experiences and look at the old parts of the school. So it was a very interesting day, and one full of good memories. One of the big things that everybody remembered was, as you come in through the school gates, there was a big climbing frame. Well, it was actually 2 climbing frames, which was a big like A-frame triangle with cargo netting over the top of it. And at the time it seemed massive, and it was probably by today's standards, probably was still quite big. I would imagine it was about 15 foot high. And as 6, 7-year-olds, we used to climb over the top of it and jump on and off it. And there was no health and safety or anything like that at all. So all of us survived, funnily enough. And I don't remember too many broken arms and broken legs. So it must be good. But one of the things we remembered, those climbing frames weren't there anymore. Obviously, health and safety has come along and taken them down. But one of the things we did remember was that there were 2 climbing frames, and not by design, but by accident. One of them was always used by the boys, and the other one was always used by the girls. And the boys used to have races up and down the climbing frames, and the girls used to stand on them and talk to each other.
So let's talk about the 3 of you from the same class. I mean, there must have been an awful lot of reminiscing going on. What was that like?
Yeah, it was for me certainly, and I think for a lot of us, it was a happy childhood. So it was good reminiscing. We had the same teachers, and we managed to remember the teachers' names, a bit of what they were like, and they were all kind teachers. There was no nastiness that any of us remember. And we also remembered there was an outside swimming pool, which you can only have in Malta. You'd never have that in England. That has now gone, but yeah, that brought back memories as well of freezing in the swimming pool.
So you had a very positive experience of meeting up with people, not just your classmates, but from people who had attended the school over the years.
Yes, yeah, because as I said, we were all living in a foreign country, but Malta is a very small country, so whilst we may not have been in the same classroom, and we may not even have been in Malta at the same time, we had memories of Malta which were the same. So we all had something that we could share and talk about. Obviously, Malta has changed a huge amount in the last 60 years, and a lot of it is unrecognisable. But there are still little pockets and corners that you think, oh yeah, I remember that. Remember this because of that.
So after the reunion, have you all vowed to keep in touch with each other?
Well, as I said, there is a school Facebook site, so we didn't make any promises, but we will no doubt keep in touch via the Facebook site. There is already talk of another reunion, but maybe not in Malta, just to get together sometime next year. But obviously with a school that's that old, sadly, the numbers are going to be dwindling over the years. So it's how much longer we're going to be able to do this, we're not sure. But it was certainly a nice experience.
So you actually went on to become a teacher?
Yes, I did, yes. I'm not sure whether any of that was inspired by my time at Vidala or not. I think when you're in primary school, you really have no thought of the future. So
you want to be an astronaut and a policeman and things like
could
that.
be, yeah, that's right. So I had no idea what I wanted to be when I wasn't in primary school. All we were worried about was getting bottles of fizzy pop when we got home, and ice cream, and going down to the beach. And that was generally life in Malta, which was why we all enjoyed it so much.
So it sounds a really, really nice experience, and particularly because it was over so many years of people attending that school, that made it extra special.
Yeah, it certainly was a nice experience, and hopefully everybody else had the same sort of experience. We had a big dinner at the end of the week, and there were 35 people there, and we talked all night, so it just shows what a positive impact it was.
Because I think when you mention school reunion, you do get a very strong reaction from people. Some people are like, oh my God, absolutely yes, whether that's your primary school or your secondary school. And for other people, it's an absolute no, I want to leave all those years behind me.
Yes, yeah, I count myself lucky that my school years at primary school and secondary school were all happy times. So I've been to secondary school reunions in England, and this was one in Malta. And I've thoroughly enjoyed them, and enjoyed talking over the past and thinking about how times were. So for me, it is definitely something I would do again. But I do understand some people have bad times at school and maybe just want to forget about it. So
a very, very short podcast. I just thought I would come on and do this with Pete, because I think a reunion's pretty cool. It was a positive experience for you, and yeah, you enjoyed it.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. And I hesitate to say this, but I would urge everyone to go back and reminisce. You're not necessarily living in the past. It's just nice to remember good times. And unless your school time wasn't good, then it's interesting. And it's interesting to talk to people to see what's happened to them. Mm-hmm.
So where had these people gone? Had many stayed in Malta? Are they all on the four corners of the earth?
No, most of them had gone back to England because their parents were military and generally only stationed out there for a few years at a time. So they would have gone back to the UK. And there were, I don't know how many. I know there was somebody from Canada there. I know there was somebody who lived in Malta that was there, and a few others from overseas, like myself, that's living in Spain. But I'm not sure how many others had actually ventured to live abroad. But certainly, I think my experiences in Malta is one of the reasons why I'm living in Spain now. It's, I enjoyed my time overseas, so I want to see more of the world.
So, Pete, thanks very much for talking about your school reunion. And thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Please subscribe for a future episode. It is free. If you have a story to tell, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's tell your story.